Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel. I am joined here today by my excellent friend, Dr. A.P. Canavan. Hello, A.P. How are you?
I am absolutely devastated that in the background there isn't your little nameplate thing saying that you're my nemesis.
Yes, well, I think it's fairly official at this point. Nameplate or no. So the world knows that we are nemesis. So
How are you doing today, Philip?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here. This is a very welcome part of my day. Let's just say that. You can see I'm still in my work clothes. So I think you might be as well there.
No, this is just what I wear around the house.
Well,
But
aren't we dapper? Yes.
what I have noticed though is obviously in deference to the season and how cold it is, that it's not just the t-shirt under the tweed. It's probably a t-shirt, the shirt, the pullover, and the jacket going, yeah, it's a bit cold.
Yeah, same here. It has been a bit chilly. So, well, we are here today to do a Malazan poem. Specifically, this one is going to be from Dust of Dreams. This is book 9 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is the epigraph to chapter 13. This is the epigraph poem, or is it? I guess it follows book 3, only the dust.
It's the epigraph to book 3, which is just before chapter 13.
Which is just before chapter 13, which has, I guess, a separate epigraph itself, which is something else. But anyway, this is Song of Dreaming, and it is by Fisher Keltath and, of course, Steven Erikson. And this is a poem of special significance. For now, I'll just say that this is a poem that Steven Erikson suggested that you and I take a peek at because we've been doing Malazan poems. And he said, you guys should check out Song of Dreaming. Of course, he told us it was in the wrong book, but
well, in Erikson's defense, it's one of the poems that he associates very heavily with a specific theme. And it was, if anyone had seen our videos on Toll the Hounds,
right,
a lot of what went into Toll the Hounds had to do with that part of his life. And this was a poem that he wrote, basically the concluding part of that particular time period. And it ended up going into Dust of Dreams. But in his head, it's all part of what he was going through at that time. So he misplaced whereabouts in which book he had placed it.
Yeah, I will note as well that he told Claudia that it was in Reaper's Gale. So
well, also he's old.
Well, and there's 3 million words, and so he's forgiven for misplacing a poem or two in amongst 3 million words. So we'll forgive him that, absolutely. But it's an important poem. And I think you just started to touch on why. It's a very important poem for him personally, I think, but also for the series among all these epigraphs. So it's one that I'm really looking forward to taking a peek at with you and seeing what we make of it. And you have very helpfully got it all written out there. So it's on your computer. You're going to share your screen with us. And you readers will see that AP has done something a little different. He has created some breaks in the poem, which in the book is just written without breaks. So AP, do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, well, the poem as it appears is written in a single stanza. But when I'm reading it aloud, because I brought this up and I thought, I'll have a go in case, depending on which one of us was going to read it.
Yeah,
I thought I'll have a look at it first. And I was trying to read it aloud, and sometimes because, in particular, this poem has very few punctuation marks dividing up phrases. And one of the things that I was when I was learning how to read poetry, was always looking for punctuation to guide you in where phrasing was, where pauses were, that sort of thing. And it became a very bad habit of breaking up a poet's work in my private notes to put in phrasing breaks so that if I had to read it aloud, I was able to read it aloud. So what I did was I put in the phrasing breaks so it's easier for people to see the different sections of the poem. But really, this is one entire stanza.
Yeah.
But also, to put it up on screen like this, you need it in 2 columns, and it made sense if I'm already breaking it up to put in the spaces. I just think it makes it slightly easier to read on the screen.
For sure. Yeah, it definitely does. For which I am grateful, since I'm going to be reading it. And then I would like you, AP, to begin us in our line-by-line analysis breakdown of this poem. But let's have a read through first so everyone can follow along, and then we'll gather our thoughts. So this is Song of Dreaming by Fisher Keltath, from the epigraph to book 3 of Steven Erikson's Dust of Dreams. The dead have found me in my dreams, fishing beside lakes and in strange houses that could be homes for lost families, in all the pleasures of completeness. And I wander through their natural company in the soft comforts of contentment. The dead greet me with knowing ease and regard nothing the forsaken awakening that abandons me in this new solitude of eyes flickering open and curtains drawing. When the dead find me in my dreams, I see them living in the hidden places, unanchored in time and ageless as wishes. The woman lying at my side hears my sigh, following the morning chime, and asks after me as I lie in the wake of sorrow's concert. But I will not speak of life's loneliness, or the empty shorelines where fishermen belong, and the houses never lived in, never again, that stand in necessary configurations to build us familiar places for the dead. One day I will journey into her dreams, but I say nothing of this behind my smile, and she will see me hunting the dark waters for the flit of trout, and we will travel strange landscapes in the forever instant until she leaves me for the living day. But as the dead well know, the art of fishing finds its reward in brilliant, joyous hope and eternal loving patience. And it is my thought now that such gods that exist are the makers of dreams, and this is their gift, this blessed river of sleep and dreams, where in wonder we may greet our dead. And sages and priests are wise when they say, death is but sleep, and we are forever alive in the dreams of the living. For I have seen my dead on nightly journeys, and I tell you this, they are well.
Well done, Philip. That was very nice.
Thank you. Was it completely different from your reading and Steven Erikson's reading?
Well, we'll might have to ask Steve to actually read it to get.
It would be lovely. Reading. That would be lovely.
But you and I have a very different approach to reading poem, and I think a part of that is, I would guess, influenced by your training as a medievalist and your reading of Anglo-Saxon poetry.
Yeah.
The stresses that you put in that, how you read lines, that's very different to how I was taught. And again, I was taught a long time ago, and it could be that I've just misremembered a whole bunch of things. But just to talk very briefly about this.
Yes.
So if you had to pick a semi-modern poet who you think would have influenced this, is there any poet that sort of springs to mind?
Oh gosh. I have, yeah.
Well, the reason I ask is, when I read this, so much of this reminds me of W.B. Yeats.
Yeats. I was going to say Yeats, actually.
Okay, well, tell you what, edit out that chunk, and then you can just go, oh, it's Yeats.
No, it's okay. I don't need to look that smart. But yeah, no, I kind of see where you're coming from, but please do explain. Yeah.
Well, a lot of the imagery about it and a lot of the feel of it is obviously, I think, reminiscent of quite a lot of Yeats's poems, but also the way that you read it. And I think part of the way that that Erikson reads it is with that focus on a line by line reading rather than looking for internal phrasing. And Yeats was very, very particular about that. Even for Lake Isle of Innisfree, like I think there's a recording of Yeats reading it, and it's almost like he is chanting that it's an invocation of some sort of arcane thing, because from what I remember, it's like, and I will arise and go now and go to Innisfree.
Yeah, it's a unique reading. I've heard that recording. Yeah.
And when I read poetry like this, I'm sorry, I keep looking to the left because this is the screen that it's on that I'm sharing.
Yeah.
But when I read this, so even like taking the first couple of lines, the dead have found me in my dreams, fishing beside lakes and in strange houses that could be homes for lost families, in all the pleasures of completeness. And I wander through their natural company in the soft comforts of contentment.
Yeah.
So I run lines together. So, you know, for people who have taken some poetry appreciation, enjambment, I'm running the lines together rather than taking a pause at the end of the line. And that's the way I was always trained to do it, to look for internal phrasing. And it's almost the antithesis of what's going on here there, because of the length of these sentences. Because look at how few full stops there are.
Yeah.
The length of these sentences, if you're thinking you're trying to say these in a single breath, in a single phrase, you're going to end up out of breath, breathless.
Yep.
And it leads to a very interesting structural thing, which is, while the first part, those first, what I've created is 3 stanzas.
Yeah.
That's really the first movement of the poem. The second stanza is the second movement. And then the third stanza, which is much, much longer than the others, is the last movement.
Yeah.
And it actually, it shakes out that way, that it's a nice breakdown of what's going on. And you can see that it's, the emphasis then is on that much longer section at the end.
Right.
And it's this movement from being alive through sleep, through that transition into death.
Yeah.
And the death is the long part.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And of course, this is from the book Dust of Dreams, and the relationship between death and sleeping and dreaming is something that is thoroughly explored in this book as a whole, and in the series to some degree as well. Dreaming has played a role, but I think he brings things together quite beautifully. And there is a resolution to this poem that I find to be significant. We'll talk about that when we get there to the end. But I agree with you about the sense of movements in the poem, absolutely. With an especially interesting transition with starting with the woman lying at my side. But it's absolutely lovely. And I think this opening stanza immediately plunges the reader or the listener into a rather dreamlike state. It's a fantastic opening. The dead have found me in my dreams, fishing beside lakes and in strange houses that could be homes for lost families. So this is immediately the 2 important concepts of death and dreaming are introduced in the very first line. And you get the sense of someone, the speaker, reminiscing, looking back, being haunted by their loved ones who have passed away right from the beginning. Is that how you read that opening?
Yeah. And like, if you think, sorry, excuse me, if you think about it, the central premise of this poem is when you have lost people, when people have passed away in your life, you have your memories of them, but it's very, very common following someone's death that you dream about them. It's almost like you're accessing memories and stuff in your dreams, except and I don't know if this has happened to anyone else, but you see them in your dreams and it's not a memory. These things never happened.
You're right.
But so this idea of almost them haunting, but haunting has such a pejorative, such a negative associated with it.
True.
That this is not haunting. This is much more reassuring. But in the opening, it is slightly off-putting. It's slightly off kilter. It's slightly worrying because fishing beside lakes and in strange houses, that it's this the strangeness of a dream world. It isn't reality. It isn't normal. There's something off about it. It's not what we expect. These strange houses that could be homes for lost families. And again, the idea of loss and being lost, that these are again negative. Describing it as negative is almost too strong, but it has those connotations of something missing.
There's a sense of the surreal, I think, which is you find so often in dreams when you're in a place that seems familiar, but it isn't exactly right. And it's more the surreal and strange, but somehow I think also compelling and fascinating as well.
And so in that first stanza that I've created, and see, this is the problem with making stanzas out of things that are not meant to be stanzas.
Yeah.
Because if you look, the transition that we have moving down, while there is that identification of dreaming, that surrealness that you've identified, and it can feel initially slightly odd, slightly strange, it almost immediately moves into the pleasures of completeness, natural company, soft comforts of contentment.
Yes.
That the speaker is at ease in these dreams. These are not nightmares. These are not worrying. These are not stressful. This is entirely pleasurable. So that moment of discombobulation, of appearing in a dream, and you're kind of looking around and it's not quite right, and then you just relax because everything is fine.
Yeah.
And that is happening in that sort of first section. And that, I think, is one of the important things about this poem, is that while it is about death and the dead and loss and mortality, it is looking at it in a very positive light. That this is much more comforting than other poems of this sort of ilk.
Exactly the right word that I was thinking too. Comforting. The poem, the overall tone, that is precisely the right word. That there's a sense of comforting, and that is certainly, as you said, carried through in the last three lines of your first stanza there, and then it continues very much in the second. Your stanza.
Okay, you know what, we'll call them stanzas for now, but on the proviso that everyone understands that this is meant to be one complete stanza. It just makes it easier to reference,
and much easier to read too. So the dead greet me with knowing ease, and regard nothing the forsaken awakening that abandons me in this new solitude of eyes flickering open and curtains drawing. So there are a few key words in there, I think. Ease is one of them. And another one is solitude, which is not a bad word. That is a kind of, so loneliness has a connotation that is somewhat negative, but solitude has a very positive connotation when one is alone, but that being alone is sustaining, it is healing, it is nurturing. And that is something that human beings actually need. So there is this sense in here of the dead greet me with knowing ease. So there's a sense of familiarity here, that this is not strange and worrying. There's a sense of just falling right into the old relationship with this person that you knew and loved, and that you're seeing in this vision. So I feel like there's a really positive sense there. Do you agree?
Well, yeah, and the strange thing is, like, this also deals with that moment of, if you think, if these dreams are comforting, where you're meeting the dead, where you're meeting your loved ones who have passed on, and they never hold it against you that you don't stay, that you forsake them when you awake, like they remain in this dream, but you're the one who leaves. And that sort of inverse of, or reversal of, how we typically think of death, that they have left us. And here there's nothing of that blame that we sometimes, whether we want to or not, that we attach to those who have died, because we can feel angry that they have left us. We can feel hurt that they have left us.
Right.
But here, when we dream of them, they never feel angry or hurt or upset.
Yeah.
That we are only there for a short space and then we leave them.
We awake.
And
yeah.
That comforting aspect of it, I think, comes through, that we see that it is a non-judgmental solace.
Yeah.
And to describe, instead of saying when we wake up, it's this new solitude of eyes flickering open and curtains drawing. It's your eyes flickering open, you pull the curtains back to let the daylight in. And that's the solitude. That's when you suddenly are on your own again, because in the dream, you've had the companionship of those who have gone before. But when you wake up, you're back in your own body. You're lying in your own bed.
Yeah.
So I think it's a nice way of playing on those meanings.
Yeah, it's you're absolutely right. And I get the sense that the speaker has reached a stage of grief where they have shed any guilt they might have had, survivor's guilt or anything like that, that this is a point of not just acceptance, but of feeling the beauty of those relationships, and being in touch with those people in their dreams is something that is a source of solace, is a source of fulfillment. And so this is a person who has reached that stage. This is not the initial raw, just very painful grief of losing a loved one. This, I think, is a bit later. I don't know for sure. I'm just conjecturing, but it feels like that.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly. This is part of the acceptance of loss.
Yeah,
and we deal so often with the raw emotions following loss, like that. Like I was just talking about, the anger, the betrayal, the the 7 or the different stages of grief, where we talk about denial. We focus so heavily on those that we tend to almost forget that they pass. Yeah. And then what you're left with is a different stage, a stage that is now going to be very, very long, which is the time that you have an acceptance. It doesn't mean that you're happy about the loss, but it means it is now part of you. You've brought it into yourself, that it is part of your day to day. It is part of your everyday makeup, that you now bear this, and it is bearable. But that scar, that pain, that loss is always going to be with you, but in a way that you've grown around it, and it is now part of you. Yeah. And life has to go on. You have to keep waking up in the morning. You have to keep going to work. You have to keep living after these sort of traumatic events.
Yeah. So the speaker has learned to carry their grief. And it's the next stanza continues that in a lovely way. I think, when the dead find me in my dreams, I see them living in the hidden places, unanchored in time and ageless as wishes. It's actually rather beautiful, I think. And so I'm taking the hidden places to be the hidden places within the speaker's mind, and that their loved one or loved ones, in this case, visit them from those places. And almost like, so we have different parts of our mind. We have our waking mind and we have our sleeping mind. And in our sleeping mind, all kinds of things are swirling around and dwell in there, including these memories, which have become a source of solace. But it's interesting how unanchored in time and ageless as wishes. So you might see your loved one when they were much younger than when they passed away. There's no logic to it, in other words. But all of that is part of, I think, the healing process for the bereaved person, is to have these various moments of reconnecting with the loved one in a way that is healing.
Yeah, and I think another aspect of this is the idea that the dreams are when almost like our souls or our consciousness or our being is unanchored from the physical plane. and we catch glimpses of a greater world beyond the physical realm that we live in.
Yeah.
And remember, like, this is in a fantasy novel. A lot of fantasy is about literalizing concepts and exploring these internal manifestations. I know you spoke about Donaldson recently.
Yeah.
So this idea of these hidden places, these are places that we in our physical forms cannot reach. But when we're asleep, when we're not bound by the rigid rules of what our conscious mind enforces, when it is just our subconscious and we are asleep and our minds are drifting free, that's when we can access the magic. That's when we can access glimpses to these other realms where our loved ones are not dead. They live on. They have these lives. And as you said, they're unfixed. They're unanchored in time. And so remembering them, how they looked 20 years ago, but that's what we see in this dream. And we know it's them because the spirit itself is ageless. The spirit itself is immortal. The spirit itself, this energy that makes us up, energy cannot be destroyed. It exists forever. It just changes form. And to be able to think of that, I think that is part of this almost wistful exploration.
Yeah, I agree. And then we have a bit of a transition. So the speaker has already awakened. We saw that with their eyes flickering open. And now they are fully awake, I think, in the next section with the woman lying at my side. So the speaker has a loved one, living loved one, next to the speaker. A woman, presumably a lover or a spouse or something of that nature, perhaps. It's hard to say for sure, but probably a loved one of some kind. And the woman has asked after the speaker, how are you? Are you okay? Perhaps because this grief has been part of their lives for some time. And so the woman seems solicitous about the speaker's well-being. And the speaker says to us, I will not speak of life's loneliness or the empty shorelines where fishermen belong and the houses never lived in, never again, that stand in necessary configurations to build us familiar places for the dead. So this is something the speaker is going to keep inside. They're not going to talk about with the woman, with the loved one. This sense of the familiar places for the dead within the mind of the speaker. So the speaker is holding back this process that's going on deep within the speaker's own mind, and is not going to share that with the loved one. That's what I'm reading there. Yeah,
and again, we have that if we think about it as the literal narrative, the thing that is actually happening. So we've had someone is asleep, and in their dreams, they were meeting their loved ones who had passed on.
Yeah.
And then we have them waking up, the flickering of their eyes, the drawing back of the curtain. And here we have the morning chime. So your alarm going off to wake you up. To wake you up in the morning, that annoying alarm. But the woman lying at my side hears my sigh, because when you wake up from a beautiful dream, when you wake up from something where you were content and you were happy, and now you've woken up and that sorrow hits you again, that emptiness hits you again, that you sigh because moments ago you were asleep and dreaming and it was beautiful and you were happy.
Yeah.
And this woman, as you said, being very solicitous, like asking how they are.
Right.
And the speaker, and this is, again, it's one of those ones that you can see it in a couple of different lights, but the speaker hiding their pain.
Yes.
Almost hiding their disappointment at about being awake, because when they were asleep, they were happy. And the speaker does this, and it's because they don't want to impose their sorrow on someone else. And again, because as you had pointed out, this is not the raw emotion immediate aftermath. This is sometime later. And we have that tension in our lives that we have to move on. And other people who are not connected to those that died move on a lot faster than we do.
Yes.
And we have to take our own individual time in dealing with these things.
Yeah.
And that can be much longer for some people than for others. But you can't expect everyone else to live on your time scale because they're going, oh, it's been a year now. Why aren't you fine? Why are you still upset?
Yeah.
Because sometimes trauma takes time to deal with.
Yeah.
But the speaker is aware of this, and the speaker doesn't want to worry the woman.
Yeah.
And therefore is maintaining life has to go on. I know life has to go on. I will not worry this woman, but I still feel it. It's still there in my interior, my interiority.
Yep.
And
it's beautiful.
But we see that then with life's loneliness, empty shorelines, never lived in, never again. That's hollow, that hollowness of that. And we can feel how that would resonate with the hollowness that you feel following a deep loss.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And we see yet another reason why the speaker would not want to speak of the experience that they have just awakened from in the next section. You mentioned sparing the woman, the loved one, a bit of that pain. And the speaker also envisions what will happen someday. This is in the future, but one day I will journey into her dreams, meaning I will pass away. I will die. And just as I've been seeing my loved ones in my dreams, she'll be seeing me in her dreams. And so what the speaker is doing in a way is trying to spare her that pain for the moment, because the speaker knows this is how this is the way this works. So one day I will journey into her dreams, but I say nothing of this behind my smile. So the speaker puts on a smile, which is not, it's a genuine smile. I read that as a genuine smile. It's not a deceitful smile. It is simply an acknowledgement of the way life works. And it is a smile. Sometimes we put on smiles in order to assure our loved ones that we're okay. But I feel like there's also something genuine behind this smile, that there was a healing going on in those dreams. And perhaps the speaker is even thinking in the future of this woman having dreams of them and going through a similar healing process, perhaps. And she will see me hunting the dark waters for the flit of trout, and we travel strange landscapes in the forever instant. This is in her dreams, right? In the landscape of her mind. I also love how we've continued the fishing metaphor here, which is interesting because we started out with fishing, and then the speaker will be fishing in the woman's dreams as well. So there seems to be a connection here. It's a wonderful sense of connection between all these people from various places. So,
well, to be fair, it is written by Fisher.
It is written by Fisher as well, which I don't know how much significance to put in that, but I think that fishing is something that is kind of important here. It wouldn't come up this many times. And it is an activity that one often does in companionship with a loved one. So it's something that you might do with someone, someone you spend time with, and it's a great way to spend time with another person. And just, it's a meditative thing to do, but also just to sort of soak in each other's company, right? So I don't know if that's, I'm just, guessing at that, but.
If wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets.
Yep.
But also there's the Irish myth of the trout. So actually sometimes it's a salmon, but the trout, the magical trout that gets caught. And
yeah,
a lot of Yeats's imagery had to do with that simple, almost country life of the quiet moments of nature and fishing, and the drowsy summer afternoons with the sound of the insects, that quietness, that contemplation. Yeah. And so much of that is tied into fishing, it's standing in silence, or sitting in silence with someone and just enjoying the companionship.
Yep.
But the waters of Lethe, all of the different water imagery about death, about forgetfulness, about dreams, even Frank Herbert's Dune and the water of life, which is the thing that is consumed to unlock hidden potential in your consciousness. Yeah. These are all common recurring images throughout so many different mythologies and cultures, that water and life and death and dreams and this flowing state, this dream world, are all linked together. So it's not out of place to have fishing as a central metaphor.
Oh, it's beautiful. And later on, a few lines down, you have the blessed river of sleep and dreams, which you just alluded to essentially. But yeah, so she, until she leaves me for the living day. So life goes on. She goes out, does her, routine or whatever it is. And we've left that place in the, or she's left that place next to him where he was so close to the dead in his dreams and his mind. But there is life that must be lived, and we go on. And so that is what happens there. As the dead well know, the art of fishing finds its reward in brilliant, joyous hope and eternal loving patience. I love those lines. So we have to live. And part of that is exactly, this is such a beautiful way to express it, I think. The art of fishing finds its reward in brilliant, joyous hope and eternal loving patience. And that is really the key to I think, living life, is that hope, that eternal loving patience. So that's a really key passage, I think, in here.
But one of the things I would highlight just before that is the allure, the temptation of hastening that end, because one day I will journey into her dreams. So one day I'm going to be dead, and I'm going to be the dead person visiting her dreams. And that, knowing that contentment, knowing that where there is no rude forsakening, where there is no pain, where there is no suffering, that it is just this constant idyllic dream. That is tempting. And you can feel the temptations in it. But the speaker realizes that this will come in time, no matter what happens. That you cannot forestall death. You do not need to hasten it. But he knows that this will be coming at some point. And it isn't something to be feared. It is something that will be looked forward to, because for the rest of time, for the rest of eternity, they will be together. They will always be together. They will, the momentary separation of the physical will be rectified by the spirit. And that is, well, for people with, say, like ex-wives or ex-husbands, something frightening. But but the idea that those that you love, even when we lose them in this world, in this life, in this physicality, that there is some point where we will be together again. That's intensely reassuring. And it's looking at this sort of division, and water always being quite often being used as a division, a dividing plane between states.
Right. And
here we have the speaker having experienced all of this, knowing it's going to happen in his future, and he will comfort this woman then, and make her feel better, and she will experience this place as well. But the big gift he takes away from this, the most important thing that he takes away from this, is these are not visions he is having in his head. These are the dead. These are the loved ones. And they live on. And that's the emphasis through all of this. It's not their memory. It's not their echo. This is them. This is their essence. And that's why that very last line, those last three words, echo so strongly. But we have yet to get there.
Well, we're getting there. We're getting there. We're almost there, actually. So we talked about the brilliant, joyous hope and the eternal loving patience. And it is my thought that such gods that exist, and there's no certainty here, such gods that exist. So there's a sense of the numinous, perhaps, a sense of the divine, but there's no certainty that this, I know God, I know this entity up there, and for sure.
Yeah, it's not God with a capital G and identified as a being. It's whatever it is out there.
Yep. Whatever it is out there, that force of life, whatever you want to call it, such as it is, such gods that exist are the makers of dreams, and this is their gift, this blessed river of sleep and dreams, where in wonder we may greet our dead. So there's a sense here that you could take life as a cruel thing, that we live and we're deprived of what we love, but this is seen here as a gift. This idea of living and connection, and even after the death has created a kind of barrier between you and the loved ones, there is still this sense of connection, and we see them in our dreams. And this is a gift. This is a beautiful thing, this blessed river of sleep and dreams. And like you said, the water, the river, is this place of separating the living and the dead, but it's also what connects us to the dead, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I think is a way of looking at this, life, with all of its joys, is also full of pain and stress and suffering and anxiety. Yep. And life can be really, really difficult. Life can be so harsh. The one thing that isn't harsh is this gift that we have been given when we close our eyes and everything of the day falls away. And that, I think, is part of what is being expressed here. That even if life feels painful, even if life becomes difficult and unbearable and sorrowful, part of our life is this sleep. And in sleep, something miraculous happens. Something beautiful and magical can happen. And that, I think, is the part of the essence of this particular part, that is recognizing the struggles of life. But it's not that, oh, these cruel gods made life this way. It's like, in recognition of how difficult life can be, here is something to ease that.
Yeah. Yeah. And sages and priests are wise when they say death is but sleep and we are forever alive in the dreams of the living. I love that line because I think it conveys to me, at least, a sense of connection that we all have to one another, the living and the dead, and all that we've been in contact with. That, in a sense, and we all have this sense that we touch the lives of the people that we love, the people that we interact with, and those acts between us reverberate and live on. So we may pass away, but all the people that I've touched in my life have a bit of me in them from my interactions with them, and perhaps they'll even meet me in their dreams at some point, like the speaker is having happen here. So it's lovely stuff.
And when we talk about, we use that phrasing that death is just the long sleep.
Yeah.
As a way of trying to soften it, as a way of trying to make it understandable. And here it's not using it as a disguise for something. It's saying, no, it is that this sleep is how we access this, that they are right to describe it that way, because in sleep are dreams. In dreams is this eternal reality, is this access to a different plane where we are all together.
Yeah.
And we can go talk about Shakespeare, and our little lives are rounded with a sleep. That there are lots of allusions to death and sleep being put together, but ultimately, what we end up with is this very powerful refrain at the end.
Yes,
which is, on these nightly journeys, and I tell you this, they are well.
Yeah. Such an emphasis by having just these three lines by them, the three words, monosyllabic by themselves, they are well. And it's such a great ending to the poem.
And that, with all of the complexity of these deep emotions and sometimes contradictory emotions, the longing to die and not experience the pain anymore, the joy of seeing and wanting to be with loved ones who have passed, like that could be viewed as quite a negative, destructive emotion. But in this, it is placed in the context that time will come to all of us. There is no need to hasten it, that there is a world and we are part of it and we enjoy it. And to balance any of the pain that we feel, we have these visits, we have these moments where we see those that we have lost.
Yep.
And the most important thing, they aren't gone. They aren't memories. They are still there, and they are well. They are happy. They are safe. They are content. And what more reassurance would any of us want for a loved one apart from they are well?
Yeah. 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 Perfect ending to this poem. So, Song of Dreaming by Fisher Keltath, AKA Steven Erikson. So yeah, I that was lovely, AP. Thank you so much for looking over this poem with me. It's a beautiful one. It's a really beautiful one. And I think that it's assuring to read of someone's experience, someone who has passed through grief, someone who has gone through this bereavement, and not only live to tell the story, but can make something beautiful of it, can convey this wonderful sense of connection and beauty. It's almost perhaps celebration is a bit going too far, but it is nonetheless, it's a beautiful reclaiming, I think, in a way, of coming back from a place of raw pain and then coming to a place where you can feel fulfilled and you can feel that sense of connection once again.
And because it's very easy to see how it could have gone into sort of almost like a mawkish, morbid, wallowing in pain. But there's more of an aching poignancy to this. That it's recognizing the beauty, it's recognizing the sorrow, it's recognizing the loss, but it's turning those things into something beautiful. And something that is universal. It's something that we all experience. We all lose people that we love.
Yep.
And the reassuring aspect of this is, this is all part of a natural cycle. Everyone experiences this. You are not alone, even though you feel alone. And even though like even the loved one next to you is never going to feel exactly what you feel. That is recognized in this poem.
Right.
But this is what everyone experiences in their own way. And ultimately, they are well.
Yeah.
And I think to end on that, any of the conflicting, potentially negative aspects of it, or the darker aspects of examining death and looking at what death is, those can be very, very dark thoughts. But ultimately, this is something positive. This is something beautiful. It is something that recognizes the pain, but doesn't dwell in that. It finds the beauty of this experience that touches us all.
Beautifully said, my friend. And I will, on that note, thank you so much again. And thank you everyone for listening in on one of our Malazan poem discussions. And until next time.